Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to hopefully wrap up my ATC 90. So I started off by doing an engine swap and I ran into a bunch of problems, and you can watch my other 3 videos on this bike to understand that, but a lot of wheel wobble and problems I didn't think I was going to have to address. A shout out to my viewer Brian, who let me know that the axle assembly on this bike is actually the correct axle assembly for this bike. So all good there. Let's take a look at the work I have left to do. All right, guys, here we are, and here's what's left to do in no particular order. Here's the engine that I swapped in. It's just lightly in place. I got to lower it a little bit because I got to get the old wiring harness out of there, and it's kind of pinched in. While I have it down, I'm going to run the new harness through the frame. I got to put the new coil in the frame. Before I do any of that, I'm just going to plug it all in and see if I have spark. We're going to replace this carburetor, which I've always hated. It's off of the 110 engine that was in here, with a real 1972 US 90 carburetor. This is also wrong. We're going to take this off and replace it with the right one. And hopefully that will get this thing to fire. I can put it back together and I can have some fun with it this winter. All right, guys, so we dropped the engine just a tiny little bit. We got that old harness out of there. I have the new one just laying here, plugged in, because I didn't want to go to the trouble of routing it if I'm going to have a problem. My coil came off of eBay. I don't know that it works. So here we are. If I give the rope a little pull, we've got a decent spark, so that's good. All right, so here we are, literally just a few minutes later. The hardest part of this job today, I thought, was going to be getting that ignition coil inside the frame and running that harness, and that's not easy with the engine in there. But somehow, I got the coil in on the first shot. There you can see it's bolted in. And if you're going to do this with your engine in, channel your inner electrician and get a stiff piece of wire, run that through the frame and use it to pull the wires through. I did all of that. I've still got spark. I'm all connected, so let's keep going. So guys, sadly, some of this is learn as you go for me. So I put the engine bolts in, and while I had it lower, I took off the intake manifold in the carburetor. And there's just no way to get the intake manifold in while the engine is up. So I've got to undo these bolts, just loosen up, remove the front 2 bolts, loosen the other ones, lower the engine a little bit so I can get the intake back on there. You can see on the bench behind me is my ultrasonic cleaner. That different carburetor is taking a bath in there right now. So we're going to get that cleaned up, lower this, get it together, and we'll see what happens next. So in case you're wondering, that eBay carburetor, when I took it apart, has all the parts, but they weren't all in there. It was missing a couple of little things, and it was filthy. So rather than put it on the bike and cross my fingers and hope I can get through the winter, I figured I'd give it a quick cleaning now, make sure we're all good before it goes on there. All right, and here's the cleaned up carburetor ready to go back in. What kind of things did I run into? Number 1, the rebuild kit that this guy had was wrong, so the jets are wrong. Nothing fits, so I'm not surprised he had problems with it. Fuel filter completely shot and all gummed up, so didn't have one, but I made one. That'll work in a pinch. Had a wood screw in one of these holes instead of a Phillips screw, so we cleaned that up. Hopefully this is good to go back on the bike. We're about to find out. In case you're wondering, I used my Sharper Tech. This is an XP Pro heated ultrasonic cleaner. And after an hour and a half in there, that's what the water looks like. I just use hot water, and it works really well. Hey, in the category of handy things I bought at Harbor Freight before they were too expensive, is this little Centec digital inspection camera. I'm looking at the inside of my gas tank to see which side is the reserve. Obviously, it's the one closer to the outside. I need to remember that. Okay, guys, so I put it all back together. You can see there's a little bit of leakage underneath the engine, but the question in terms of whether or not this thing will run has been satisfied. So let me just show you quick where we are. So you can see it starts right up, but I've got a float bowl problem after all that cleaning. Looks like the float is sticking. And then I've got an oil leak coming out of the, what I think is that lower valve cover. So we're going to have to take a quick look at that too. And to be clear, not the lower valve cover, but the cover for the valve adjust seems to be where it's leaking. So since I'm a little bit surprised that that float would be sticking after all the work I just did, I put the tank on the bench. I've got the carburetor connected, and when I turn on the fuel, boom, not leaking from the float bowl overflow, but from the inlet. So we got to take a look and see why we're leaking there. And as you can see, there's not really a lot that can go wrong in there. So I am going to find an O-ring that fits. I'm just going to assume that one is shot. And one of the positive things about doing this as long as I have is that you've got parts for just about everything. So I replaced that O-ring with one I had, turned the fuel on, and now it doesn't leak. So that looks like that's solved. The oil leak, I believe, is because I don't have the right copper crush washer on that one top stud. Yeah, and for the record, I had some cheesy aluminum crush washer in there. I've got a whole bunch of these little copper guys from my GT750 rebuild. They're a little thin, but they're the right diameter. I put 2 on there. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so here we are, carburetor back on the bike. New O-ring on that float or that gasoline intake. 2 copper crush washers up on the top. I'm going to start it. Let's see how it goes. Seems to be pretty good. Alright guys, so after all that, where does it leave us with this bike? Well, the engine runs, which is good. I'm not surprised. The transmission works, the clutch feels fine, so happy with that. My mystery US 90 engine is good, my new electrical is good. I gotta put my headlight in. I've got the wrong switch, but I know how to make that work. My taillight doesn't seem to be working, that's okay. And then if you noticed, idle's a little bit high at the moment. Probably need a little bit of carburetor tuning. I got to take a look and see what the recommended setting for the air screw is. Right now I'm about 1.5. Turns out maybe 1.25. And I just got to check. I reused the old gaskets on the intake because I didn't have new ones. So a little bit of air getting in would give you that higher idle. Other than that, seems good. Pulls hard. And I'm happy. We got it fixed. It rides better now as a result of fixing the rear end. So, for my rider, I am good to go for the winter. Look for a future video where maybe we start cleaning this thing up. But until then, guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Do me a favor and subscribe if you're not, if you enjoy my content. Leave me some comments down below. Some of the other comments have been really, really helpful. Thanks, guys. See you soon.